my question is this: why has everything seemed to merge together? I know the mantra, the hashtag ran it. Everything school. Well, why is it this way right now? I mean, for a school that walked through the desert, for forever, it feels like. Why is it all in harmony? Why is there so much success at Tennessee right now?
To quote my friend Billy Haley in Nashville, winners win. I think you hire winners, you make good hires, they win. Tony Vitello, I was talking with Eric about this the other day. Like when I was in school, '06 to 10 at Tennessee, I watched a lot of Todd Riley baseball. I covered a lot of Todd Riley baseball. You could count on two hands the number of people that were at Lindsey Nelson Stadium for a midweek game. The program could not be less relevant. That's why I, as a student, was there covering the team. That's all I could do. Like it's hard to wrap my mind around how quickly he turned it around, B, how consistent he's been, how C, he continues to build upon what he's already done, which has been crazy. Um, the year over year success that he's had has been crazy. I mean, softball is softball. Like you hold them to a different standard because they've been winning for so long. Like they've
Sure.
been winning for a long, long time. So it's not surprising when they're winning the SEC back to back seasons or when they're going to super regional, when they're hosting super regionals. Um, and obviously, what Rick has done with basketball in terms of just the year over year, year to year consistency and success is pretty unprecedented and kind of a little bit, not a lot of guys have done that with Tennessee basketball. So, I mean, I think it's the guys that have been hired, the men and women that have been hired, that have immediately flipped their programs around and built winning cultures and continued that consistently throughout. I think it just starts there because, like Al Davis said, you get good coaches, you get good players, you just win, baby. I mean, that's it. Like go get good, get elite talent, get elite coaches, and win ball games. It feels like that's what a lot of these different programs have been doing.
What's fascinating to me, Austin, when you look at this is, and I'm not taking anything away from Danny White, and obviously he's let his coaches coach, and he's given them all the resources they need to win, and there's a winning attitude and a winning culture in place for all sports, not just about a single sport. Nobody's a football person or a basketball AD. I mean, it literally is an everything. But to me, what's fascinating is John Curry, who by the standards of every Tennessee fan was a disaster because of the whole coaching debacle and the search, he lands you Tony Vitello. Okay, I mean he found a winner, an up and comer that nobody knew who he was when he was hired. Dave Hart goes and hires Rick Barnes, who a lot of people thought was out of gas and the tank was empty for Rick. Right, like this was a soft landing spot for a guy who was in the twilight of his career, and instead it's a resurgence for him. But Dave Hart does that. He doesn't get a lot of credit for it because everybody talks about everybody that Dave Hart made mad on campus with all the things he tried to do with the elimination of logos and fighting with the city on everything and liking a good backstreet fight whenever he can get that. But my point is, you can't say this one person fixed it, right? It's been a combination of people who got some things right along the way. I mean, Philip Fulmer hired the volleyball coach, who went to the elite Sweet 16 or Elite Eight, the golf coach. So it's been kind of all of them. It's just all come together here under Danny White, but they were all hired by a bunch of different people.
Yeah, and those different sports started to trend in the right direction before Danny got here. But again, he in some ways comes around at a great time as they were blooming. But as you said, lets his coaches coach. Um, I think provides an atmosphere of fun. Tries to make things an event. All that helps in recruiting. And at the end of the day, he hired the one sport that matters. Like, not that the others don't matter, they all do. But like when football is really good and starting to get back to being really good, I mean, Brennan Webb, the golf coach, will tell you, when do they like to bring kids on OVs? During football season. Why? Because they get to see all of it, right? What Dalton Connect do? He came in for what? The spring game. Was blown away by the 40,000 for a spring game, and it left an impression on him. So, like, again, Danny made the correct hire for football. it got right, and then all it did was throw a little fertilizer on plants that were already blooming nicely and made them bloom even brighter with these other sports.
Is it that
For me,
simple?
for me, exactly what AP said with football. For me, it puts into context, like, you understand how big football is and how important it is, but this puts it even more into context, like crystal clear. Like, yeah, Tony Vitello, A+++ hire, elite as it gets. That's a great hire for John Curry. Nobody remembers it because John Curry was like Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner during that coaching search, and it was a disaster. Like, that's all people are going to remember. And Dave Hart too. Rick was, in hindsight, a great hire. I mean, he was the third coach in 3 years. They were lost. They needed somebody to come in and stabilize and have a culture and win. And that's exactly what Rick has done during his time here. That's an elite hire, but Dave doesn't get remembered for that. What and why everybody gives Danny White so much credit is because football was in a terrible place in January 2021. And he hired the guy that he had at UCF, and nobody got real fired up about that. But he's come in here, and Josh Heupel has won, and he's taken a bad situation, and he had them beating Alabama in 2022, and fans storming the field, and all that scene, and it's not only what he's done, but it's also kind of the Nico era is just getting started, and he's done so well in quarterback recruiting, among other things. I mean, it's football pays the bills, and football stirs the pot, and the AP is exactly right about Don't Connect. I mean, when a spring game sells you on a basketball kid who becomes a guy that you probably need to retire his jersey, and he's a program legend, like, that tells you what football is and how much it means. And if you're an AD, you're a great AD if football's great. You're a bad AD if football's bad.
Yeah, you're right. And here's the other question, and we'll get ready to go out the door on this. Do you think fans pay attention to other sports more when football is good?
Yes.
100%.
But listen, baseball had fans, but is baseball further elevated because football's in a good place? Is basketball, which has been good, is there more passion there when football is good, or is that too simple?
I will say this. I think because football had been in the wilderness, Tennessee fans were gravitating towards anything that showed a pulse. And
Okay.
basketball showed a pulse. Baseball showed a pulse. And so all of a sudden you start selling out Lindsey Nelson Stadium. And then in 22, you're getting all those home runs and this and that. And it just, to me, it kind of just expanded on that. Like, Tennessee fans were just looking to find something to be happy about because football had been such a dumpster fire for so long. And so now that they've gotten back to being pretty relevant again, and baseball continues on its path, basketball is doing its thing, you start to see some traction in other sports. The people that love golf are paying attention to what Brendan Webb did.
Not because of football, but because they love golf.
Yeah, people that love tennis are and have paid attention to it. Pay attention to what the tennis team is doing. And so. And because Tennessee's not been to a Final Four since Candace Parker was here, and now she's retired from the WNBA, all that spotlight goes to the Lady Vols. And now Danny White's made a move. He's hired Kim Caldwell. We'll see how she does. But obviously, there's a lot of attention on that. So it will be interesting just to see how it all goes. But I do think it's yes and no. Like, I do think that, like, football definitely helps. But when Tennessee was so bad for so long in football, fans were just grasping at anything that showed a pulse in as far as winning, because they need something. What did Tennessee fans love to do? I told my wife when we were driving on Sunday or Saturday, if Tennessee can win this game, if Vanderbilt holds on, I said Tennessee fans will be so obnoxious in Kentucky's Twitter. They love that, and they've not. And for a while, they didn't have a reason to be obnoxious about anything. So all of a sudden, it's like, ooh, we can be obnoxious about Tony and the baseball team. Ooh, basketball. Now football, now everything, and they can just, and it's what it is.
Brett, how much does the personality of Tony Vitello and Rick Barnes, although they're opposite, but how much does their personalities, how much has that helped interest? Winning's winning, right? There's no doubt about that. But to Austin's point about the blooming and starting to build, how much of it was, you got a baseball coach who's brash, who's getting thrown out of a game, suspended, and selling lemonade outside the stadium, early in his career. And he's not afraid to mix it up with people. And then you've got Rick Barnes, who's, and Mr. Intense coach who's winning games, but he's also this, do good, everything in the community for people. He's a jokester, prankster, all that stuff. How much has that helped, do you think, just having those personalities?
Yeah, it does start with winning, and that's what they have in common. With Tony and his personality, and just that brashness you talked about, that confidence. Like they're not only going to win, but they're going to let you know about winning, and they're going to hit a lot of home runs. They're going to have great pitching. They're going to do all that stuff. But it is that they're fun to watch. It's a fun program to follow because of the way they win games. Some people hate if it's not your team, you hate that team. But if it's your team, you love it and you dig your heels in. And they support that team at every turn. With Rick, I think it's also part of he's built this thing on like 3-star guys and kind of under the radar guys and guys that people didn't really know about. Like Admiral Schofield was a Donnie Tyndall guy, but he kept Admiral and he turned him and Grant Williams into something, and he turned he went and found Zakai Ziegler. Like they've done so much better with these kind of chip on their shoulder, under the radar recruits than they've done with the 5-star guys, the elite guys. Like Dalton Connect was not a 5-star. Everybody in the world wanted him for his entire time in the portal. He was a little bit more of a find. So I think it's also that, like, they're going to show up and they're going to play really tough defense, and they're hopefully going to have enough offense to win basketball games. And they've won at such a consistent level. Like it always goes back to winning. Like they've won at such a consistent level, basketball, baseball, you name it. Like it's great when football's great and the high tide lifts all boats. But if you're going to win, people are going to follow your program, especially Tennessee fans. They're going to show up and make a big deal about it. And they've won at an elite level. A lot of different programs have at this point for a few years now.
Pretty interesting that football's trying to hold up their end of the bargain for a chase for championships, and it's a football team that beat Alabama in 22 and gave Tennessee the biggest moment that they've had. But everybody has elevated their game. I mean, Tennessee's in a place, if you're a fan, this is a golden era and a golden moment for you. Enjoy every second of it.